What is up, gamers? I want to talk a bit about the MENACE demo today. So I'm not going to be talking too much about like strategy or specific squad loadouts or anything like that. I just want to talk about some mechanics that maybe people don't understand very well or are not very obvious. The written guide and the video guide I don't think do a very good job of like actually explaining how the game works, and that kind of shows, like, if you go on the subreddit, there are people being like, I don't know how this game works, like, well, I suck, I can't play this game. And I've like watched like videos of like other people playing the game, and it's like they're making weird choices, they're doing things that don't make sense if you actually know how the game really works. So my goal here is just to kind of cover those mechanics and hopefully inform people about, how do you actually play this game properly? Like, how do you understand the mechanics so that you can formulate a winning strategy for yourself? I'm not going to talk too much about the actual strategies that I use. It's more about understanding the mechanics. Okay, so enough waffling. The first thing I want to talk about is how does the shoot, or to recap the shoot sequence. I think this is a like fairly well, or it's fairly easy to understand thing. You have a weapon. Every squaddie in your squad has this weapon. If you have a special weapon, then your squad leader holds the special weapon. But if you unequip your special weapon, then your squad leader also gets your weapon. You shoot when you are in a battle. When you use the shoot action, costs you 40 action points. You shoot. Everyone holding the squad weapon shoots their weapon a number of times equals the rate of fire. So in this case, it's 2. And then if you hit, you do some damage, or if you miss, you don't do any damage. So the first thing to kind of talk about is accuracy. So the first part of that equation is, do you hit or not? That's by default is 70%. So accuracy is like your percentage chance to hit. And then there are a bunch of things that affect this. So this weapon, for instance, has a 10 plus 10 accuracy modifier. So I think that means it gives you plus 10% to your accuracy, or it might be plus 10 flat to your accuracy. I'm not 100% sure actually. You can get like a perk. This guy has a perk. You can mark a target to get plus 30% accuracy against it. Deploying gives you accuracy. Blah blah blah. There are a bunch of ways to get plus accuracy, but then there are also a lot of ways to gain defense, which kind of reduces accuracy. So this guy has a perk that just gives you defense for being close to enemies. You can get other perks that give you defense in various things. You can get a perk that gives you doubles your defense when you're suppressed or pinned down. So when you get suppressed and you deploy, your troops will all kneel down. That gives you a defensive bonus as well as an accuracy bonus. If you get pinned down, you get a very big defensive bonus. Cover gives a lot of defensive bonus. So the game just kind of compares those two values together, and you get a final hit chance. So one thing to kind of be perhaps slightly aware of is that your base accuracy is only 70, so you're 70% chance likely to hit something. If you're just standing in the open, you're shooting at someone standing in the open, you're only hitting 70% of the time by default. Again, there are ways to increase your accuracy stats, but 70 is not 100. It's not that much over 2/3, right? And if you're standing, you're shooting into cover, you're shooting into far away, because there is accuracy falloff. We'll talk about that in a sec. You lose accuracy, so that's one thing to just kind of be conscious of. So after you shoot, you then, let's say you shoot and you hit, the next question is, do you penetrate? So the exact formula for penetration is, as far as I'm aware, not been revealed by the devs, and nobody's worked it out yet. So the devs know, but nobody else knows. So I don't know exactly how it works, but more armor penetration makes it more likely that you'll penetrate armor. I believe that if your armor penetration is higher than the armor value, so in this case 25 versus 10, you will probably always penetrate, if not always. If it isn't 100% penetration chance, it's going to be very, very close to it. But if your armor penetration is less than the armor value, so if you take more than 25 armor, if we take like 45 armor, then now there's actually a reasonable chance to stop the bullets from penetrating. There's 55 armor against 25 armor penetration. I don't know what the formula is, but from having played the game, armor seems quite effective. Like 55 armor will save you from bullets, a few bullets before it starts to take damage. If you don't penetrate, you'll do the armor damage. See there, it does 10 armor damage. It'll do 10 damage to the armor durability, so it'll go from 45 durability to 35. But if you do penetrate, the armor is unaffected. You just deal hit point damage to the hit points. So you either damage the armor or you damage the hit points. So that's kind of how the shoot flow works. I think that hopefully won't come as news to you if you've kind of played the game a little bit. But what might come as news to you is that everything I just said, all of those numbers are affected by range, and quite significantly by range. So if we bring up this panel again of this weapon, you look at this little graph that's like down here. You see there's a green line and a red line. So we talk about the red line first. It's got the label hit point damage, but it's not only hit point damage, it is also armor damage, and it is also armor penetration. So as you gain distance from your target, you lose damage. Your penetration goes down, your armor damage goes down, your hit point damage goes down, to the point that shooting at maximum range doesn't do very much damage at all. I believe there is a devlog, and that's quite old now, so it might have changed, or it might change in the future. But the figure they kind of gave as an example, I think, was something along the lines of at 6 tiles of distance, there was a rifle that lost more than half its damage. So the rifle was doing half as much damage at 6 tiles. So you can imagine probably going to be something similar for this weapon. I believe that the fall-offs per weapon, so different weapons are going to have different damage fall-off. That might be true, that might not be true. I don't know. There's a lot of things that we don't know. But regardless of the exact numbers, it is very true that just the raw damage values do decay over distance, and over high distance you lose a lot. To the point where it's noticeable that even if you have good accuracy, you still don't get as many kills as you might expect compared to when you shoot very, very close. And that also means that if you're at point blank range, you are going to do full damage, or as much damage as you possibly can. And this makes a big difference. The other thing to talk about is the green line, the accuracy line. So that is similar to hit point damage in that it falls off, but it doesn't fall off from 1 and go straight down. It goes up and then down. So every weapon has an effective range, which is like the range at which it has the best accuracy. And that is where you will get your 70 base accuracy. Every time you go above that or below that, you lose some accuracy. So if you're shooting from very far away, or you're shooting from too close, you actually lose accuracy. So being closer doesn't always mean more accuracy, but being closer does always mean more damage. So the trade-off between accuracy and damage, I'm not 100% sure on those formulas. I don't know which is kind of more optimal. If you're using this carbine, will you do more damage overall at 1 tile versus 4? Don't know. But you will definitely do a lot more damage at 4 tiles than if you shoot at something that's 7 tiles away. Guaranteed. Well, not guaranteed, I guess, because it's a down to random chance, but unless you get extremely unlucky, or assuming the same level of luck, shooting at a unit 4 tiles away is going to do a lot more damage than shooting at a unit 7 tiles away, if all other conditions are equal. So, yeah, that's the first thing. And the conclusion, the sort of final conclusion, just to reiterate, is high range equals low damage, because you lose accuracy and you lose the raw damage values. So combine those two together, you're a lot less effective. Just because you can shoot at 8 doesn't mean that shooting at 8 is actually a good idea. If you're at a range of 8, you're probably better off moving closer first and then shooting at 4 tiles distance, maybe 5 or 6. You're still going to do damage. But yeah, so that's the first big conclusion. The second mechanic we'll talk about is suppression. So suppression is how you get close to enemies without dying, because everything that I've just said about how your shots affect enemies also applies to enemies shooting you. So if you close the gap and you're standing very close to enemies so that you can kill them, they can kill you. So how do you not die? Well, the answer to that is mostly in the form of suppression. So one thing that is really important to understand about suppression is that it is better in general to suppress lots of units. Spend a lot of your resources suppressing lots of units on the enemy team rather than focus firing and trying to sort of eliminate high priority threats completely, like you might do in other strategic games like XCOM or Battle Brothers or whatever. And I'll kind of explain why. So how does suppression work? Well, you start out unsuppressed, and then there's a bar that can fill up, and for every 1/3 of the bar you change states. So anything under 1/3 you're unaffected, you're fine. Then if you go over 1/3 you get suppressed, which applies like the suppressed debuff for 1 turn. And then if you go over 2/3 of the bar you get pinned down, you get a very harsh penalty. And then at the end of your turn, when you end a unit's turn, it loses 1/3 of that bar. So you will go from, if you're pinned down, you'll go to suppressed. If you're suppressed, you'll go down to unaffected. So what does it do? Well, suppression reduces your action points by 30 and forces you to deploy, so you kneel down, and it reduces your accuracy by quite a lot, like 50%. It's a very heavy debuff. That number might change, and I'm not sure exactly how that number factors into the final calculation for hit chance. I believe it's just a minus 50% penalty to your accuracy stat. But it's a big one, right? 50% is big. And then if you get pinned down, you lose all action points. You're out of the turn. You can't do anything. All you can do is end your turn. With the slight exception that for your units, your infantry units, you can commando crawl for 0 action points. You can crawl like 3 tiles or something. So you can move very slightly, but you can't do any shooting. You can't do any objective actions. You can't throw any smoke grenades. You can't do anything. You just have to kind of lie there. The silver lining is that being pinned down gives you a very, very heavy defensive buff. You take half damage, and you impose a 50% accuracy penalty on squads trying to shoot you if you are pinned down. So it's very hard to kill pinned down squads. So that's kind of suppression. So why is it? So I mentioned the effects of suppression. So why is it that I asserted it's better to suppress rather than try and isolate and focus fire one unit? So I'll just run like a quick example. Let's suppose you have this squad. We've got 5 squad weapons, 2 rate of fire, so that's 10 shots per action I use, and I can do that twice, right? So it's 40 AP, I get 100 action points per turn, I can shoot twice for 80 action points total, and I've still got 20 that I can do to, I don't know, deploy or move like 1 tile. So that would be 5 elements carrying a carbine, times 2 rate of fire is 10 per action, times 2 actions is a 20 bullets that go downrange. Let's suppose I have, just for the sake of this example, a 100% chance to hit. Obviously that's not realistic, but it just makes the example easy to work with. Let's just assume that it's 20 hits. So I get 20 hits. Cool. Now let's suppose that this unit is suppressed. So the first thing that happens is minus 30 action points. So now I can't shoot twice. Right? If I have minus 30 action points at the start of my turn, I have 70. I shoot once for 40. That leaves me with 30. And for the maths geniuses among you, we've already worked out that 30 is less than 40. I can't shoot a second time. I've only got 1 shot. So already we're only getting 10 hits. With 10 shots, right? We had 20 shots and 20 hits. Now we only get 10 shots. But also suppression applies a 50% accuracy debuff. So now instead of a 100% hit chance, we have a 50% hit chance. So we've gone from hitting all 10 of our shots. We're only hitting half those shots. So we only get to shoot 10 times, and we only hit 5 of those on average. Right? Obviously this game has a variance. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky. But roughly speaking, you're going to get 5 hits. So we've gone from 20 hits to 5 hits just by applying suppression to this squad. So that's a 75% reduction in the offensive capability of this unit, which is pretty massive, right? If you had an item that was plus 75% damage reduction, you would take it on everyone, right? You'd just be spamming that shit on cooldown. It would be like the best item in the game. So applying suppression is a very, very big debuff. And when you compare something to like XCOM or whatever, in XCOM or another strategy game like this, or Bass Brothers, you played that, which overhypes previous game, that doesn't work the same way. The most effective way to eliminate threats or to reduce your risk and reduce the enemy's firepower is to just kill high priority targets, take them off the board. You can achieve a lot more in Menace by applying suppression to lots of units, or applying suppression to the high value units, rather than trying to focus fire and destroy one unit. And again, because of that pins down defensive buff, it's quite hard to focus fire. It's quite hard to actually destroy an element, destroy a unit sometimes, because unless they're completely in the open and you've got like a close range weapon like an SMG right next to them that can really finish the job, they kind of just lie there, and if they're behind cover and they're pinned down, you just like can't get at them. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, that the way you win this game, the way that you develop a winning strategy, is by recognizing that suppression is much better than focus fire. Like suppression across the board, being able to suppress lots of enemy units, much more valuable than pinning down and focus firing one unit. Cool. So that was suppression. The last thing I want to talk about is vision and line of sight. This is just like hopefully a quick one. Just like a kind of a bit of maybe more of a tip than a mechanics explainer, but every unit has a vision stat. That vision is what shows you what's on a tile in the battle. You get like the tiles are like lit up, they're shown. If you move away, it goes grey, you get the kind of fog of war effect, so it's out of vision. That's vision. That is separate completely to line of sight. Line of sight is the ability to shoot at a tile, and hopefully the enemy unit that's in that tile. Vision and line of sight actually don't have very much to do with each other. Just because you have vision of a tile doesn't necessarily mean that you have line of sight, although probably actually it does. But more importantly, you can have line of sight to a tile without having vision. You can shoot at tiles you can't see as long as they are within your line of sight. So an example of where this might actually happen in a real battle is if you take a vehicle. That's not the button I want to press. This vehicle has 7 vision, only 7 vision. So sometimes what happens is you'll have an infantry squad that can see a tile, and you know that there is a squad in a certain tile, but because this APC only has 7 vision, you actually can't see it with the vehicle. And when a squad gets like pinned down or something, it loses vision, it can't see that tile anymore. But these weapons have a big range, right? 10 tiles of range on this autocannon. It's quite likely that at some point in the battle, this vehicle is in range of a tile, but it can't see it, but it can shoot it. I assume that there's some kind of accuracy debuff. I don't know exactly how that works, but you can certainly shoot it, and you can certainly apply a lot of suppression to a tile. So that's just kind of it's less of a fundamental mechanic to understand, maybe, compared to suppression and like how the damage fall off works and this kind of stuff. But it is quite a nice thing to know, and that's something that I didn't understand when I started playing the game, and now that I've played the game a bit more, it's actually quite useful to know. Oh, I don't need line of sight. I don't need vision. I need line of sight, so I can be far away and not see a tile. But if I know there's a pirate squad standing behind this particular piece of cover, I can shoot with my autocannon and suppress them, even if one of my other squads has got pinned down or moved away. So yeah, I think that's everything I want to talk about. Bye.